Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another edition of the Stampede. My name is Ryan Jones, along with my good friend and partner, Ashton Yanez. Today, we got a lot to unpack. I went 4-0 in my picks in the playoffs. Ashton, we had a disagreement. We're going to talk about that later in the show. Turns out I was correct about that. What
Uh-huh. Brag all you want. We'll get down into the specifics when we go.
Yes, we will. A lot of other news in the NFL world. The Falcons, Lions, and Chargers all made hires this past weekend, and two teams are left, the Eagles and the Texans, that have coaching vacancies. But to start off today, let's talk about the Falcons hiring offensive coordinator Arthur Smith from the Titans organization. So, what do you think about the Titans picking up Arthur Smith?
I think it's a good hire. They definitely want to go to a different direction regardless. I think Arthur Smith, he's done really well as a coordinator. It'll be interesting to see how he does as a head coach. Despite how well the Tennessee Titans have played, I'm not sure if he'll necessarily bring that success, at least offensively, into the Atlanta Falcons. I was never really a big fan of how he drew up all the run plays and how it was really obvious that Derrick Henry was the center of attention for the entire franchise. And I think with Matt Ryan, you definitely don't want to use that same system. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. Atlanta is one of those franchises in recent years where it just seems like they never really had the right fit with their personnel. So it'll be interesting to see how they now work together with their hire.
So personally, I'm a big fan of the hire. I think that hiring a new offensive coordinator means you're more likely to draft a quarterback in round one with the number 4 overall pick, which I think they need. I think they need to start looking towards the future. Matt Ryan, he's not one of these quarterbacks that's more mobile, whatnot. So he's not going to be able to keep it up at an older age. Listen. We saw Big Ben the way he performed. We saw Drew Brees the way he performed this weekend. Neither quarterback played well. They're getting older. Matt Ryan's getting up there in age too. I think he's 36, 37 years old or whatnot. But even for looking at it from Matt Ryan's perspective, I actually really like the hire. He comes from the Shanahan tree. And if you remember back when the Falcons blew a 28-3 lead in the Super Bowl that year, was the year Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator, and they let him go for a head coaching job. So and he runs the same system where Matt Ryan had his MVP season. So I think that if there's a chance for the Falcons to have a winning season next year, I think the best candidate for the Falcons was Arthur Smith, a guy who comes in. He's going to run a system that Matt Ryan's familiar with. And look, you moved on from Kyle Shanahan all those years ago. I feel like this is somewhat making up for that. Because for the longest time, Matt Ryan has had nothing but defensive head coaches and whatnot. And he had Dan Quinn, who's now the Cowboys defensive coordinator. LOL. I'm laughing at that. A guy who couldn't even make a good defense. He's a defensive coach, and the defense was horrible. Actually, the Falcons defense, after he was fired during the middle of the season, they became a better defense. They were actually top 10 in the league, I believe, in total defense after he left, after he got fired. So I really like the hire. Hopefully you can get a good defensive coordinator in there, and hopefully the Falcons, since the Saints, as we saw this weekend, I would imagine the Saints are on a decline. We don't know who their quarterback is going to be this season with Drew Brees retiring. I think the Falcons have a good shot at making the playoffs, behind the Buccaneers next season with this hire. All right, let's move on to the Detroit Lions hiring Dan Campbell, the Saints tight end coach. Now, look, I know that a lot of people aren't going to be a fan of this. They're going to be like, what is this? There's other head coaching candidates. There's Josh McDaniels out there, Brian Dable. Those guys don't want to come to Detroit. And I think that this is a really, really good fit for the Lions. When you are a franchise that is this bad and has been bad for years, right? I don't remember the last time the Lions had a winning record. They have not been good in years. And that's with a top 10 quarterback in the league in my eyes. At least in my eyes. I don't know where you are out in Stafford. I think he's a top 10 quarterback in this league. I think he's severely underrated. I think he's gone through hell. Look, you have a young tight end in TJ Hawkinson, who was your first round pick 2 years ago. I think next season he's going to have a breakout. I like what the Saints do offensively. He's going to bring that to the table as well. And I think if I read correctly, he's bringing somebody from the Saints defensive staff over with him to be the defensive coordinator. And both systems are very, very good. The Saints defensive system and the Saints offensive system. And when you're a team that isn't very good and you've had this, you just need to raise the ceiling or raise the floor of what you are. I don't care if the Lions go 8-8 next season with Campbell. In my eyes, that'll be a success for this franchise, right? Because they've been bad for so long. So, what do you think about Dan Campbell?
I think it's a unique hire. I mean, the bar is pretty low in regards to what expectations Detroit will really have right after the bad season that they just had this past year. But they're definitely about having a new identity. They're about having a new coaching staff that comes from a different culture. When they hired Matt Patricia to be the head coach of Detroit, it was safe to say that they were just looking for a New England copycat. And which, granted, New England had a great system that lasted them really well in their years. The problem was Matt Patricia, he was solely relying on all his veteran players. He did not know how to create players that would fit his system. He was just trying to find the players that he already had. He was trying to find the players he's already coached. And, all those guys well past their prime already. And so you just see Detroit once again falling apart. But I do think that with the staff that they hired, especially now that's from a different franchise that have worked under Sean Payton, you'll see guys who know how to bring in new players, younger, talented players, and players that definitely fit a system that has helped Drew Brees make it to the playoffs year after year, despite how much of a decline Drew Brees has been.
Yeah, look, I mean, the people thought it was crazy when Sean McVay got hired at such a young age. Now Dan Campbell comes in. He's only a tight ends coach. He's a positions coach. He's not even a offensive coordinator or whatnot. Look, I think the guy if he interviewed well enough to get a head coaching job, you got to think there's only 32 of these in the whole entire world. 32 NFL head coaching jobs. This is the dream for him, and I hope that he succeeds going forward because I am a Matthew Stafford fan, and I hope that he can get things turned around, and if not, maybe on another team, right? All right, let's move on to the Chargers hiring Brandon Staley, the former defensive coordinator for the LA Rams, who had the number one ranked defense over the course of the season. What do you think about the Brandon Staley hire? I know some people were disappointed that they didn't hire an offensive guy to, maximize Justin Herbert and whatnot. I have a response to that, but I'd like to hear what you have to say about first.
Well, yeah, a lot of Chargers fans, and Ryan, we actually know a few personally who are Chargers fans. It definitely wasn't a flashy selection. It wasn't a flashy hire, which was a surprise considering all these players that the Chargers have. They're all flashy to some extent. I mean, you have a young, talented quarterback out of Oregon that was drafted in the first round. You have defensive linemen that are playing like they're all first round picks, even though it's really just Bosa that stands out as that first round draft pick. Their secondary's playing well. They have good linebackers. Offensive line's okay. They have good tight end, good receivers. Austin Eckler, he really showed up and took Melvin Gordon's spot easily, kind of pushed Melvin Gordon out of the way. Now he's playing as a semi-starting running back for the Denver Broncos. I mean, this is just a team that's all around flashing. Like, oh, wait, we just need the coach down. And when they hired Staley, people were confused because Staley, as you said, he's a defensive-minded coach, which when you have a young quarterback like Justin Herbert, people are really hesitant to see that really working in the current NFL, but it has worked in the past. Mike Tomlin, he's a good all-around coach who was coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers, and had kind of helped Ben Roethlisberger when he was young to kind of progress into a really good quarterback, and he was already part of a really successful, flashy team. So I definitely think it'll work out, especially since Staley. He is more of an all-around guy than people think. Yes, he has a great success as a defensive coordinator, and he's coached the number one defense in the NFL. But he's been around some great coaches all around. He's worked with some offensive players. He's worked with Sean McVay, and I really think if he has half of what Sean McVay has in offensive knowledge, I think the Chargers are going to do pretty well, especially compared to having Anthony Lynn these past 2-3 years.
So my response to Chargers fans being somewhat upset they didn't hire Brian Daboll. At this point, it kind of looks like Brian Daboll's not going to get a head coaching job, which is kind of surprising. But I mean, that's good for Bills fans and for the Bills franchise if they can keep him around for one more season, right? I mean, obviously the Bills are gonna be in contention for next season. We'll talk about the Bills later. But my response to them would be like, what are you talking about? Like, let's take a look at some of the defensive players that you have on your roster. Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, if he resigns. You have Jerry Tillery, a first-round defensive tackle that needs more developing. You have Denzel Perryman, Drew Tranquill. You have Kenneth Murray, a first-round pick last year. Chris Harris Jr., one of the best corners of all time. You have Derwin James, who has the potential to be one of the best safeties of all time if he can stay healthy. Nasir Adderley, another first-round, second-round pick. You have Casey Hayward, one of the best corners in the NFL. This is a lot more talent than what he had working with the Rams. Obviously, he had the best defensive player, probably the best two defensive players in the NFL, right? He had Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, who's most people consider the best corner in the NFL. I don't, but most people do, right? Outside of that, he didn't have much, and we saw it in their final game against the who'd they play this weekend? The Packers, right? So I like Darius Williams a lot for the Rams as well, but we don't know how good Williams is. He kind of came out of nowhere. This is one season for him. I think the Chargers will probably end up having, if they can re-sign Melvin Ingram or bring in somebody with their first-round draft pick on the defensive side of the ball, if they don't decide to go offensive tackle, even in free agency, Von Miller might be a free agent. If you could bring in Von Miller or something like a division rival type thing, there is a lot of potential here for the Chargers to potentially have the best defense in the NFL next season. And if you don't think that with the best defense in the NFL and an offensive core of Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Hunter Henry, if you don't think that'll make the playoffs, then I think you're just become too accustomed to Anthony Lynn coaching. This guy is basically the defensive Sean McVay, for one. And for two, he's bringing over somebody from McVay's staff to be the offensive coordinator here. So you're going to end up running one of the best offensive systems, Sean McVay's system in the NFL. I don't hate it. Plus, Brandon Staley was a former quarterback in high school and in college. So he knows what he's doing when it comes to quarterbacks. He can still develop Justin Herbert. Just because he's a defensive coordinator doesn't mean he can't develop Justin Herbert. If anything, him being a defensive coordinator may help him out more, learning coverages, learning, all the type of things that are going to get thrown at him while he's playing. So I think this is an A+ hire, and I'm buying my Charger stock now. I think they're going to be a sleeper Super Bowl contender next season. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's move on to the divisional round. Our reaction to the games, starting off the Rams at the Packers, the first games. I'll let you start, Ashton. What do you think?
It was a game that I pretty much expected. I really, as much as we give props to LA's defense being number one in the league, having Aaron Donald, having Jalen Ramsey, that Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams combination is just so dynamic and dominant and almost impossible to defend, even when you have Jalen Ramsey on Devontae Adams. And Aaron Rodgers, he has ways to get the balls out to almost anyone else. And we see him how well he is at, escaping the pocket. He basically juked a defender while stepping up in the pocket in that game. So it was pretty much what I predicted. And then Matt LaFleur, he's a great coach. I think people forget how well he's doing, as a new head coach for the Green Bay Packers. This is only his third year into with the Green Bay Packers, and he already has just as good as a record as any of the Green Bay Packers coaches that started their first 3 years. So this is a really good team, has a really young coach who's changing the way the offense is schemed up. He has an MVP quarterback. He has one of the best wide receivers in the league. Almost just darn near impossible to defend. And yeah, I expected some type of 31-21 or 34-17 type of point game. So yeah, this is everything I suspected that was going to happen.
Going back to LaFleur, this is only his second year as a head coach. So
even better.
Yeah, he went 13-3 last season as his first year, 13-3 this season. I think the Packers are a lot better this season than they were last year. A couple notes I had written down during the game. AJ Dillon didn't have the biggest game. He saw some carries early, but then Aaron Jones took the majority of the lead as he should. I think AJ Dillon could be very, very scary for opposing teams, and I think he could be really good for the Packers. He's a pick that everybody criticized very early. Like, why are you taking a running back? You have two really good ones on your roster, in Williams and Jones, and right when they need wide receiver help, right? But I think having fresh legs at the running back position is very, very important in the NFL, and I think it's something that not enough people talk about. We saw Derrick Henry go out and have a terrible game in his first playoff game this season. So I think having a fresh running back, another fresh running back is really going to help the Packers in these next two games if they end up beating the Buccaneers. I noticed something from the Rams' perspective. I know they played a lot of off coverage, playing 8 to 10 yards off the ball. I don't understand why, when you have one of the best route runners in the NFL and one of the best quarterbacks. Like, the quick passing game, Aaron Rodgers live off that. And he did. We saw what he did. Packers receivers continuing to struggle with drops is something that could come to bite them in the butt against the Buccaneers and potentially in the Super Bowl. That first drive, we had what, 3 drops by receivers in the first drive of the game. It's got to be frustrating for him out there, So I want to talk about the Rams a little bit more. We'll talk about the Packers more, I think, in their preview against the Buccaneers that we'll talk about on Friday. I don't think Goff looked horrible in this game. I noticed that they mainly had him throwing to the middle of the field inside the hashes just because of the thumb injury. And, he didn't throw a lot outside the numbers. I also thought the Rams, it must be so irritating if you're Sean McVay. The Rams had a lot of stupid penalties in this game, that kept the points off the board for them, that maybe would have made the outcome of this game a little closer. Maybe even the Rams could have won if it wasn't for these penalties. But I think the biggest factor here was that Aaron Donald was a no-show in this one. Obviously, he was hurt, but this Rams defense just did not do much without him, right? Look, there was no getting to Aaron Rodgers, and without Aaron Donald, taking a double team, he was getting manhandled by one guy. So I just think that without Donald, I don't think the Rams have a very high ceiling. So, I hope he gets healthy for next season. But, yeah, this was all Packers in this one. Pretty easy win for them, I think. All right, moving on to the Ravens and the Bills. You want to start with this one, or should I?
Yeah. Actually, you talk about that one. I'll start the Tampa Bay New Orleans one. I'll give out my my losing speech.
Okay, well,
that one starts.
So in this game, I noticed that, Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals, so that was like, whoa, what is going on, right? He's probably recognized as the best kicker of all time for the Baltimore Ravens. So I just want to kind of point out the fact that the weather had a big impact on this game, not only in the kicking game, but in the passing game. I don't think really, Josh obviously played better than Lamar, but I don't think really either quarterback had their best game here. And I think that the wind and the weather had a pretty big impact on that. There's one play that I kind of wanted to point out from the Ravens side of the ball. There was a 2nd and 22 play after Lamar was sacked for a 10-yard loss. And then they decided to run the ball for 3 yards on obviously they didn't decide the 3 yards, but I think that, since they're running the ball on 2nd and 22, it really just kind of shows the trust that they have on Lamar throwing the football. Look, I know this guy's an MVP candidate. I know he's won the MVP that last year, but he really just struggles throwing the football at times, right? There's times where he throws it and you're like, all right, yeah, he's like any other quarterback. I think it's just really inconsistent with him. And if he didn't have his if Lamar didn't have his dynamic running ability, he wouldn't be a quarterback in the NFL. So, luckily he has that. I think the Ravens defense played about as well as they could in this one. They didn't really blitz Allen, which is a good thing. They played more coverage because obviously Allen's the number 1 quarterback in the NFL against the blitz this season. Lamar's just a limited passer, and I think that's what it ultimately came down to. I think that if you're the Ravens, you have to go a different direction. From your offensive coordinator, Greg Roman. Look, I know he's gone to a Super Bowl with Colin Kaepernick as his quarterback. He's worked with these mobile quarterbacks, but this type of brand, this type of football has just never worked in the NFL long term. And you have to be able to make throws when it counts. And Lamar isn't able to do that. You need to get somebody in there that can develop him so he's able to do that in a better offensive system.
Well, let me go ahead and say to all those who thought the game was, quote unquote boring, I actually enjoyed the game overall, regardless of who won and lost that game. I liked how physical it was. I liked how both teams were fighting for every inch of the field. That is what I expect out of playoff football, regardless if it's high school, college, the pro levels. In regards to quarterback play, they are definitely two styles of quarterbacks here. You have Lamar Jackson, who is very dynamic with his legs, who can make those deep ball throws if the play action is there to set up. And then you have Josh Allen, who can just throw that ball anywhere, and I mean anywhere, not just on the field. That thing could hit the stands, it could hit the skybox, it could hit a parking lot if he really tried.
Yeah.
He's got a ridiculous arm, and if you just give him time in the pocket, and even with some of the mobility that he has because he's young, he's able to create all kinds of plays that we haven't really even seen Lamar Jackson make with his arm. And so Sean McDermott did a great job taking away the bread and butter of John Harbaugh and that Baltimore offense, which was taking away that read option, keeping Poyer and Hyde in the tackle box to take away those outside runs, to take away that read option, have outside linebackers twist, have defensive ends just commit to the dive. They were doing all kinds of mix and matching stunts to make sure that Lamar Jackson did not have more than 8 yards a carry, because they solely rely on a lot of those option, triple option type of plays for Baltimore. And then great job again to Sean McDermott for another adjustment he made after the first half, was by deciding that they could afford to run the ball more because they knew Baltimore's defensive backs were so lined up against Josh Allen and his wide receivers. Stephon Diggs has already made it impossible to already cover one-on-one. Then you have Cole Beasley, who, even though didn't really do much for the Buffalo Bills in that game, he was still someone that defense had to recognize and address. So that actually allowed Zach Moss and Singletary to actually get some rushing yards in the second half, kind of opening up that run game. And so once I saw Buffalo actually getting 5 to 10 yards on both run and pass plays, I knew this was Buffalo's game to win. And I'm a fan of the game overall. I was definitely not surprised that Buffalo won. They were definitely the team that's favorite. They're the hottest team, in my opinion, in the NFL. It'll be interesting to see how they match up against Kansas City Chiefs for the second time this season. Their first game, in my opinion, was definitely a lot closer than it had to be, because we weren't sure how much Josh Allen developed. Now that he's gone so much better, even up to the end of this season, we're going to have quite the match in that AFC Championship game.
Yeah, looking forward to watching that. I think that both of these teams, the Ravens and the Bills, played about as well as you could, at least defensively. I mean, the Ravens defense only allowing 10 points, one touchdown coming off a really bad interception. We're talking about Lamar Jackson, 101-yard pick six there. And the Ravens offense only scoring 3 points, man. That's just something you can't do. I think they should move on from Greg Roman, but they probably won't. Overall, I agree with you. I don't get this game's boring. Just because there's not 50 points scored on both sides like college football doesn't mean the game's boring. Anything else you wanted to add for the Bills other than Josh going to get paid this offseason? Let's just say that.
Oh no, I've already heard all kinds of rumors, from people within the Buffalo Bills organization, within the NFL itself, from Ian Rappaport, Adam Schefter. They're all saying that there's definitely rumors coming in that his contract extension is supposed to be ridiculous. Will it be close to Mahomes' money? I'm not really sure. I think it still depends on how far the Bills make it to the playoffs. If they win the Super Bowl, definitely. But it's definitely going to be exciting to see what kind of superstar money Josh Allen makes, especially like Patrick Mahomes only being in his third season.
All right, let's move on to the heartbreak of the weekend, in my opinion. The Browns at the Chiefs. I'll let you start with this one because it just hurts me to talk about. And then, so yeah, go ahead.
You have to give Cleveland credit where it's due. I mean, this is a team that can play now in not only in the AFC North, not only in the AFC, but in the NFL. They really went toe to toe with Kansas City, and it really just came down to coaching. And Andy Reid, he found a way to still, escape an upset to the Cleveland Browns, even with a backup quarterback because Patrick Mahomes is on concussion protocol. But Cleveland, they're a real team. They can run the ball, they can throw the ball. They've Baker Mayfield. He's figured out what play concept.
Are you ready to give him credit? You think he's a franchise quarterback, Ashton? He is a franchise quarterback.
He's
a franchise quarterback.
He's in, but
he's a franchise quarterback.
Stop saying he's a franchise quarterback.
He is. That's what he is. He's a franchise quarterback.
He's
not Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen.
No, he's not.
He's better than Kirk Cousins. He's a tier above Jared. He's better than Jared Goff. He's above that tier of quarterbacks. He's not. Yeah. He's not the elite of the elite.
He's a franchise quarterback, but I wouldn't say that he's a long tier franchise quarterback.
Oh my God, bro! You're killing me. You're killing me.
He's. I will say this. Now he's a very talented, athletic franchise quarterback. But when he does get into his 30s, can he roll out the same? Will he be able to throw out of the pocket the same? Because if not, then there goes his bread and butter. I still don't see him as a good pocket passer in the NFL. I think he's O-line to where he's been doing well in the pocket. But if they don't have that O-line consistently, I don't see him doing that well when he gets older. But I do think right now he is a franchise quarterback, as you said, Ryan. I will agree that now he is a franchise quarterback, and he will probably be, the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, for the next 5-6 seasons.
You hurt my heart. Okay, the Chiefs came out, and I thought that they had no rust whatsoever, so I think that the bye week really benefited them. Obviously, they only scored 22 points, but this is playoff football, so they're going to be lower scoring games. Man, when Jedrick Wills, the first round tackle from Alabama, got hurt in the first quarter, the very first drive for the Browns, I thought, yeah, this game is going to be over. And, it was right after a Cleveland touchdown or a Chiefs touchdown. I thought this game was going to be over, but I really, really think that this isn't the old Cleveland Browns. This is a team that, when their back's against the wall, like it was in this game, they continue to fight and play very well. Other than the one interception that Baker Mayfield did have, he played a great game overall. And they might have only lost this game because of the stupidest rule in sports. Obviously, I'm not going to hang my head on a play that happened in the first half, because you had a whole nother half of football to figure it out and score more than 17 points. But I would hope you agree with me that it's a really stupid rule. But you live and you learn. I think Cleveland's going to be right back in the same spot next season. They're going to be back here in the postseason. So, I want to talk about Andy Reid. So I think that he made 2 plays in this game, or he called 2 plays in this game. One was one of the stupidest plays of the season, where he got his franchise quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, hurt. And there is potential, we're going to cross our fingers, that potentially he could miss the AFC Championship game. So there's that. 2, he also has the biggest balls in the world for calling that play on 4th down to basically seal the win. Look, if you don't get that, Cleveland gets the ball, and I would imagine, for most of the game, their offense was rolling. They just, didn't come away with points. So they have a good chance to go down there, score, and win the game and upset the defending Super Bowl champs. So I'm going to give props to Andy Reid, but I'm also going to give, I don't know what the opposite of props is, but I'm going to take the props away as well for getting his quarterback hurt. He really needs to stop using Mahomes as a runner. Like, it's the second time that this has happened. It happened last season as well, like in the middle of the regular season. I know they won the Super Bowl, but he missed a few games last season because you got him hurt on a quarterback sneak. So just stop using him. It's the second time it's happened as a runner. you got a good running back core. Call a different play. Do something, man. Like that's all. What do you got to say about?
Well, I won't get too critical with Andy Reid about running those pitch option plays because we've seen how well their offensive line can block and Travis Kelce blocks that he really gets untouched even if he decides to pitch the ball or not. So I can't really get mad at him for calling that play, especially since I've seen it work almost every game that they run it with. They actually scored a touchdown off that in a prior drive against Cleveland that game. So it's just part of their playbook. And Patrick Mahomes, he's young. I mean that mobility is there. Take advantage of it, especially during playoffs. Like yeah, Cleveland's, we expect Cleveland to be Cleveland, but at the same time, we've already just said in the beginning of, talking about this game, they're a legitimate team. And when you play legitimate teams, you got to use everything that you have in your disposal. So, Patrick Mahomes, yeah, he does get hurt sometimes when he does run the ball, but those are all just freak accidents. Any quarterback can get hurt like that. Lamar Jackson could have gotten hurt like that by the Buffalo Bills off those, double option, triple option type of plays. So, I still have to give credit to where it's due to Andy Reid, but also just the Cleveland team in general for being so much better from last year, especially having a new GM and having a new coach.
One more note. Before Baker Mayfield was the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns, they had 15 straight losing seasons or some shit like that. So
something crazy.
Yeah, he's a franchise quarterback. Anyways, let's move on to the game Ashton got wrong. The Buccaneers at the Saints. Go ahead, buddy.
Oh yes. I
also want to point out I am 10-0 in my playoff picks. I haven't got a game wrong this postseason. So
here's the thing. Tom Brady, he did play a good game. I will say that.
It was okay.
He was okay. He did.
So was the defense, but
Tampa Bay has a good defense. Something that I didn't think about, and I wish I did, and now Saints fans, they're probably realizing too, is that offensively they don't have an identity. They don't. I mean, if you really think about it, we talk about how we're not sure who the quarterback will be for New Orleans next season because we're not even sure what kind of offense they ran entering this postseason. Drew Brees was, even though he recovered, he was still pretty much hurt. He was still pretty much banged up. It was important that they protected him. But if you solely rely on protecting him, then you're probably, okay, so that limits New Orleans to a play action type of offense. Pretty much what the Rams run, and Alvin Kamara, he's more of a good receiving back as well as a good running back, but that offense just looked really limited under Drew Brees because all he can do is throw up to 10 yards. So it was only going to be runs and quick slants. You can go to James Winston, but it doesn't look like he's learned to make his reads yet. He looks like he's still committed to those go through. Just that go-to route. And yeah, maybe Michael Thomas would have actually caught a ball in that game if James Winston was quarterback, but we would probably seen whoever was covering him probably get an interception or two as well. And then Taysom Hill was hurt. They were really missing Taysom Hill. I didn't realize how important Taysom Hill was to the New Orleans offense until he got hurt this past week and him not being part of this game. So if you're a New Orleans fan, you're probably like me and just scared that you don't know what New Orleans is going to look like. If they're going to really, fight like hell and try and stay competitive next year, despite probably not having Drew Brees, or just tanking and just letting your backup quarterback or, a practice squad quarterback just lead the team, get you a top 5 overall pick in the following year and try and get someone else or get a trade. I don't know. But New Orleans, it's just weird to see them lose the game the way they did, especially since they were so competitive these last 3-4 years. And those last 3-4 games that they lost in the playoffs, it wasn't because of Drew Brees. But now I can say, yeah, it was because Drew Brees was banged up. I saw the pain in his face trying to throw that ball past 10 yards on Sunday or Saturday, whenever they played. I think it was Sunday, actually. So, yeah, it's scary to say that he's no longer a QB1 now. He can no longer function as a QB1, especially in today's NFL.
Well, Jay Glazer before the game reporting that Drew Brees would retire after this game. We'll talk about Drew Brees' retirement after we finish covering the game as our final topic, just kind of looking back on how great of a quarterback he was over the course of his career. Look, I mean, if you started Jameis Winston in this game, you would have probably ended up having the same 3 interceptions that Drew Brees threw. But you probably would have ended up with 2 more touchdowns and you win the game. So, look, I think that there is look, maybe you're just noticing it this season, but this is the Drew Brees that's been around for the last two postseasons. I know that they've gotten screwed out of wins by refs and whatnot. I know the Saints fans will complain about that, but look, as far as I'm concerned, the arm strength hasn't been there for the last two seasons, and him also being hurt doesn't help. But look, hey, Dan Marino lost his last game like 62-7, so I don't want to. And obviously, I think Drew is a better quarterback than Dan Marino. He has a Super Bowl. He's first all time in the passing stuff. Well, he won't be because Tom's going to continue to play, but
he's still basically top two in almost every quarterback category.
Yeah, and he's gonna end up being top two in every category. He's just gonna be two because Brady's gonna play another season. Look, Drew, he's just limited, and I think you saw it going up. I mean, like you said, Michael Thomas 0 catches, 0 yards. Kamara had 18 carries, 85 yards, so we had like a decent game. Brady didn't have the greatest games, only 199 yards passing, 2 touchdowns. I think that the defense just played really well. I mean, they have Devin White, Levante David, Antoine Winfield. They have Ndamukong Suh on the interior. Jason Pierre-Paul, he's a veteran, but he's still out there kicking. They have Shaq Barrett, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL. Look, they just have a lot defensively. And Todd Bowles, who is up for one of the head coach. I think he's up for the Eagles head coaching job as well as Josh McDaniels. Todd Bowles is the Bucs defensive coordinator. He's a former coach. Where did he coach before? Where did Todd Bowles? The Jets. He was a Jets head coach for a while there. Look, I think that he is known for being one of the most blitzing defensive coordinators in the league. He blitzes more than anybody, and I really think that's all you have to do to beat Drew Brees on obvious passing downs. Bring more than 5, or and you have a really good chance at winning. And I mean, we saw it. It just wasn't pretty. And I want to talk about the Taysom Hill thing. Look, I think that the gimmicky offense only works for so long. And the gimmicks having like 2 quarterbacks on the field, 3 quarterbacks. Like, this isn't high school football. Like, trick plays only work for so long. The only reason the score was as close as it was is because Jameis Winston threw a 56-yard touchdown pass on a trick play. The reason they put him in there is because Drew can't throw more than 10 yards. He would have underthrew the guy by 20 yards, right? I just think that it's time for them to move on. They're in such a bad spot. They're like $100 million over the cap, which means even with Brees' retirement, Jameis Winston is a free agent, so you can't even re-sign him because you're, like I said, $95 million over the cap. They're going to have to get rid of some guys. And I fully expect the Saints to be, look, and maybe it's too early to say because I'm a big fan of Sean Payton, but they might end up being one of the worst teams in the NFL next season because they're going to have to move on from some guys. I know that they have Kamara and Michael Thomas locked up, but on the defensive side of the ball, you have Cam Jordan, Marcus Davenport, you have Marshawn Lattimore. Like, you're going to have to move off of a big name next season in order to just get $50 million under the cap, right? Because you're $100 million. You have to get rid of some guys. And I think that they're going to suffer so much not having Drew Brees and not having Jameis Winston. Like, you're going to have to run Taysom Hill as your quarterback, and maybe you're a Taysom Hill guy. I'm not yet. He just has to show me more, I just don't. I don't like where the Saints are at right now. I think that I don't know how the heck they can even. I don't know how the heck they can be $95 million under the cap space. Like, that doesn't even make sense to me. Like this. Like, someone needs to do an investigation of that. It's worse than Bountygate. Like, how are you $95 million over the cap? How can you afford that? Like, I don't understand. It's bizarre to me. So yeah.
No, it's crazy how New Orleans is pretty much bankrupt at this point. It'll be interesting to see if the NFL even like does anything to go like, hey, because you've already spent all this money, you're basically not allowed to sign free agents You're basically any player that is going to be a free agent, you can't re-sign them. I don't even, and New Orleans, they went so deep into the playoffs that they don't really have a lot of draft stock, so it's not like they can really afford to trade down. They're
The only quarterback that may be available at their pick is like Kyle Trask, and I don't even like. I'm not even a big Trask guy at this point. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he's a second, third round talent as a quarterback. So I like. There's not much you could do. I think they're just gonna have to roll with Taysom Hill next season and see how it goes.
Well, and even then, let's say they even decide to even draft a quarterback in the first round, even maybe in the second round. If they do end up having a quarterback that plays consistently, do they even get to pay them? Will they even still be? Will they even have money by the time his contract's up? I mean, I see New Orleans having long-term problems. I mean, this is gonna be bad. This is gonna be like 2-3 years of Kobe Bryant's last seasons with the Lakers. Like, you knew the Lakers were gonna get hit hard, especially once Kobe Bryant left, because you knew that there was no really other talent around there. You knew the money was already spent on Kobe and the last good teammates he had when they were making their championship runs in the early 2000 teens. This is a team that's just going to be that 30 to 32nd ranked team in the NFL for, quite some time until they get their money right, until they tank far enough to get high draft stock. This is a team that's going to be hurting for a while,
Like,
since they don't even have an identity now offensively.
yeah, I'm interested to see Taysom Hill. So, but Winston, I think Jameis is a free agent, so I don't even if Hill doesn't work out, you're kind of screwed there, right? I just wanted to touch on Drew Brees and his potential retirement. Obviously, nothing's official yet, but Jay Glazer is reporting, and I mean, usually when Jay Glazer reports something, he's right like 100% of the time, right? So, he's one of the most credible guys out there. Like, he's up there with Schefter and Adrian Wojnarowski. He's got his Woj bombs and whatnot, but he is growing up. I mean, he was one of the quarterbacks that the two of us kind of got to watch throughout his career. I mean, he won a Super Bowl a year after a hurricane hit New Orleans, and really kind of just brought that city back and made it, what it is today. A beautiful city, a beautiful, everything. So they're like a part of New Orleans history. Him and Sean Payton and whatnot. And Drew is, he seems like one of the best humans to be around, and he's obviously one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I've always said that I really think that he's one of the most underrated quarterbacks of all time. Like, his name's never brought up in the GOAT discussion, and I think it should be. I think he's up there with Brady and Montana and, Peyton and Elway. I think he's up there with those guys, right? So I just wanted to kind of, just kind of acknowledge that this is the end of Drew Brees, and thank you, Drew Brees, for all that you've done for the game of football.
Yeah, I'm really expecting that Hall of Fame class of 2026 or 2027, whatever year Drew Brees' first eligibility will be. I definitely see him being in Canton, Ohio, really soon. But
Hands down, it's not even a discussion. Like,
yeah,
he's the first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the top 10 greatest quarterbacks of all time. So
yeah, no, it's no doubt. He basically helped a city be proud of themselves once again after going through so much hardship, especially during Hurricane Katrina. Being top two in passing categories for in recent years, playing the way he did. A lot of people doubted him because of his size. People weren't sure if people as tall as Drew Brees could do well in the NFL, especially since most quarterbacks are expected to be 6'2", 6'3". Drew proved everyone wrong. He kind of really changed the landscape of football itself. He's one of the reasons why Nick Saban stayed to play college, stayed to coach college football. Nick Saban, he had his stunt in Miami with the Dolphins, and he wanted Drew Brees, but because they told Nick Saban, well, he's coming off an injury, he's not your NFL prototype quarterback, he's really high risk, and we just don't want him to, we just don't think he'll be the guy for your system. And Nick Saban said, well, I like having control. So if you're telling me I can't succeed with the players I know I can succeed with, I'm going to go back and coach college football where I can run a whole program. And it ended up obviously working out for Nick Saban, basically helping the SEC stay being the best conference in college football. Got LSU a national title in 03, gave Alabama, 6 more national titles when he got there in 2007. So Drew Brees, he's not only a person who impacted the NFL, he impacted the football world. And I think that's something that people forget about, how he was part of that butterfly effect, and how a lot of people's success in the NFL now, as well as in college, it's all owed to Drew Brees and his legacy.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously a smaller quarterback. He's one of the first, shorter quarterbacks to kind of break the stereotype. Like, well, the Drew Brees is the reason Russell Wilson has a job. Kyler Murray's allowed to play in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like, these guys that come in, Baker as well, all these shorter quarterbacks are kind of able to play in the NFL. I mean, most of these teams thought to themselves, if Drew Brees can do it, being his size and whatnot, then this guy that we're going to drafting that we like should be able to as well, kind of that sort of thinking. So, yeah, I agree with everything you've said. One of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. And unless you have anything else to add, I think that'll do it for this episode of the Stampede.
No, that's pretty much it on my end. Drew Brees, whether you decide to retire or not, I wish you the best. Definitely one of the greatest quarterbacks I've ever got to watch, let alone in the history of the NFL. And just and for those who are Saints fans, I really hope the Saints somehow find a way to just stay together next season, despite what the roster looks like.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude this episode of the Stampede. No matter what platform you're listening on, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, please do yourself a favor and do us a favor. Like the video, subscribe, comment below, give us a 5-star review. Whatever the platform you're listening on allows you to do to support us, we would really appreciate it if you can go ahead and do those things. This is kind of mine and Ashton's dream here. We want to do this full time for a career. So it would really, really help if you were able to support us in whatever way you could. And with that, I think we're going to end this episode of the Stampede. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Stampede. Ryan Jones, Ashton Yanez. We'll see you next time.